You can spend years trying to become someone successful, someone respected, someone people notice, someone whose life looks impressive from the outside. And at first, it can feel like strength. You work harder. You achieve more. You learn more. You try to look confident. You try to have the right answers. You want people to see your value. But slowly, something changes. You begin to watch yourself through other people's eyes. You wonder how you sounded, how you looked, what they thought of you, whether they respected you, whether they noticed what you had done. A simple conversation can become a test. A mistake can feel like a threat. Someone else's success can feel like your failure. Even silence can become uncomfortable, because silence gives you no proof that you matter. This is where the struggle becomes strange. The more you try to build an important version of yourself, the more you have to protect it. If you want to be seen as smart, you become afraid of looking foolish. If you want to be seen as strong, you become afraid of showing weakness. If you want to be seen as successful, failure becomes harder to accept. If you want to be admired, criticism starts to hurt more than it should. The identity you built to make yourself feel powerful now needs constant care. You have to feed it with praise. You have to protect it from doubt. You have to compare yourself with others to make sure you are still ahead. And without noticing it, your freedom begins to shrink. You are no longer simply living. You are managing an image. There is a quiet difference between being a person and trying to prove that you are a certain kind of person. One comes from within, the other depends on the world around you. This is one place where the old wisdom of Taoism begins to look very different from the way we usually think about power. We often imagine power as standing above others, being louder, being stronger, being noticed, having more. But Taoist thought points towards something much quieter. It asks what happens when you no longer need to prove your importance, not because you have failed, not because you have given up, but because you no longer need an image to tell you who you are. That idea can feel almost backwards. If you stop trying to become somebody, won't you become less? Won't people overlook you? Won't you lose your place? And this is where the deeper problem begins. Because maybe the real question is not how to become more important. Maybe it is why being important has become so necessary in the first place. What are we really protecting when we defend our image? And why does the need to be somebody have the strange power to make us less free? The strange thing about an identity is that once you build it, you have to protect it. If you have decided that you are the smart one, you cannot easily admit that you do not know. If you see yourself as strong, weakness can feel dangerous. If you need to be successful, failure becomes more than a bad result. It starts to feel like a threat to who you are. And this is where the mind creates a quiet trap. You may think you are protecting your confidence, but sometimes you are really protecting a story about yourself. That story might say, I am better than this. I should know the answer. I cannot let them think less of me. I have to prove myself. The words may never be spoken out loud, yet they can shape almost every choice you make. Someone criticizes you, and you feel the need to defend yourself. Someone else succeeds, and you feel the need to compare. Someone ignores you, and suddenly their silence feels personal. Someone questions your ability, and you spend hours thinking about how to prove them wrong. The event itself may be small, but the reaction is large because something deeper has been touched, your identity. This is why two people can experience the same failure and feel completely different. One person sees a mistake and thinks, I need to learn from this. The other feels, what does this say about me? The first person has experienced failure. The second person feels that failure has become a judgment of their worth. There is a big difference between having a quality and needing that quality to feel valuable. You can be intelligent without needing everyone to think you are intelligent. You can work hard without needing your success to prove that you matter. You can be confident without needing to win every argument. The moment you need these things to support your identity, they gain power over you. Now, your peace depends on how people respond. Your mood depends on whether you succeed. Your confidence depends on whether you are praised. And your actions begin to change, not because you want to live well, but because you are trying to protect an image. This is where an old Taoist idea becomes quietly important. What is rigid is easier to break. A tree that cannot bend is more likely to suffer when the wind becomes strong. The same can happen inside a person. The more fixed your idea of who you must be, the more life can threaten you. You become easier to control because you have something to defend. And maybe this is the part we often miss. The problem is not wanting to grow. It is not ambition. It is not becoming skilled or successful. The deeper problem begins when you cannot feel whole without proving that you are those things. Because then the question is no longer, what can I become? It becomes, what happens if the world stops confirming who I think I am? And that question leads somewhere uncomfortable. Because protecting an identity does not only take attention. Over time, it takes something much more precious. There is a point where trying to be important stops making you feel strong. It starts to make you tired. You begin to watch every word you say. You think about how you look. You notice who is doing better than you. You remember every piece of criticism. Even small mistakes can stay in your mind for hours. You tell yourself that you are simply trying to improve, but something deeper may be happening. You are trying not to look weak. And when looking weak becomes something you fear, life becomes a constant test. You cannot always admit that you do not know. You may avoid saying, I was wrong. You may hide your fear. You may work harder than you need to, not because the work matters, but because you need to prove that you matter. Then comparison enters. Someone gets praised, and you wonder why it was not you. Someone becomes more successful, and you feel behind. Someone speaks with confidence, and you feel the need to show that you know more. You may never say any of this out loud, but inside, a quiet race has begun. And the strange thing is, there is no finish line. There will always be someone smarter, someone richer, someone more popular, someone more successful. If your peace depends on being above others, peace will always be out of reach. This is the hidden price of needing to be important. You give the outside world the power to decide how you feel. Inside, a comment can change your mood. A failure can change your confidence. Praise can lift you up, and criticism can bring you down. You may think you are gaining power, but you are becoming easier to control. This is what attachment does. When you become attached to a certain image of yourself, you begin asking life to protect that image. You want people to respect you. You want events to support you. You want your success to continue. You want nothing to challenge the person you believe you must be. But life does not work that way. Things change. People change. Plans fail. Opinions change. And when you are too rigid, every change feels like a threat. Taoist wisdom points toward something very different. What can bend can move with life. What must stay rigid can break under pressure. Maybe strength is not always about holding your ground. Maybe sometimes it comes from being free enough to move, but that raises a difficult question. If you stop fighting so hard to prove your importance, what happens to your ambition? Do you become weak? Do you disappear? Or could letting go of the need to prove yourself reveal a kind of power you could never find through force? There is a strange kind of strength that does not need to be seen. It does not enter every room trying to become the center. It does not need the last word. It does not turn every disagreement into a fight, and it does not spend its energy telling people how powerful it is. At first, this can look like weakness. We are used to thinking that strong people must push harder, They must speak louder, stand firm, and make sure others know their value. But Taoist wisdom looks at power in a different way. It asks what happens when you stop forcing life to prove that you are important. Imagine two people facing the same difficult moment. One pushes against everything. They must be right. They must win. They must control the outcome. Every problem becomes something to defeat. The other person stays steady. They listen. They watch. They know when to move and when not to move. They do not give up their strength. They simply stop wasting it. There is a big difference between these two ways of living. One is always fighting against resistance. The other knows how to move with it. This is close to the heart of Taoist thought. In Taoism, there is a deep respect for what is simple, natural, and not forced. The Tao does not need to shout to be powerful. Nature does not need to prove itself. A river does not argue with a rock. It does not need to defeat the rock. It keeps moving. Over time, its movement can change what force alone could not. This is the kind of power Taoism points toward. Not power through pressure, power through freedom. When you stop needing to appear important, you become less trapped by other people's reactions. You can listen without feeling small. You can change your mind without feeling defeated. You can let someone else receive praise without feeling that something has been taken from you. You can walk away from a pointless fight because your pride does not need to win it. This is not weakness. It is a different kind of control. You are no longer trying to control how everyone sees you. You are learning to control where your own energy goes. This is where the Taoist idea of Wu Wei becomes easier to understand. It does not mean doing nothing. It means not forcing what does not need to be forced. It means acting without carrying the heavy need to prove yourself through every action. A person who has nothing to prove can often see more clearly. They do not have to protect an image. They can respond to what is actually happening, and that makes them flexible. Flexibility matters because life never stays still. Plans change. People change. Success changes. Failure changes. Even the person you think you must become will change. If you are too attached to one image of yourself, every change becomes painful. But when you loosen your grip, you can move, and that may be the deeper meaning of humility in Taoism. Humility is not thinking that you are worthless. It is simply refusing to make yourself the center of everything. You can still have goals. You can still work hard. You can still have standards. You can still become very capable. You just do not need your abilities to prove that you deserve to exist. And when that need becomes quieter, something unexpected happens. The energy you once used to perform yourself becomes available for living. So what happens when you stop spending that energy on being seen? What could you finally do if you no longer had to keep proving who you are? Something changes when you stop trying to show people who you are. You do not become empty. You do not lose your personality. You simply stop turning every moment into a performance. You no longer feel that every answer has to sound smart. You can say, I don't know. You can listen without planning your reply. You can make a mistake without rushing to explain why it was not really your fault. And at first, this can feel uncomfortable. Because when you have spent years protecting an image, letting that image become less important can feel like losing part of yourself. You may wonder what people will think. Will they still respect you? Will they still notice you? Will they still see you as capable? But something quiet begins to happen when you stop needing those answers. You become less busy watching yourself. And because you are no longer watching yourself all the time, you can finally pay attention to what is actually happening around you. You hear people more clearly. You notice small details. You think before reacting. You become less afraid of being wrong. You can change your mind without feeling ashamed. This is not weakness. It is self-respect without self-importance. Self-respect says, I know I have value. Self-importance says, I need everyone to see that value. Those two things may look similar from the outside. Inside, they are very different. One gives you a steady place to stand. The other keeps asking the world for proof. This is where the Taoist idea of Wu Wei becomes more personal. Wu Wei is often understood as action without force. It does not mean sitting still and doing nothing. It means not adding struggle when struggle is not needed. When you stop defending an image of yourself, many actions become simpler. You do not need to win every argument. You do not need to correct every person. You do not need to explain every choice. You do not need to make every success visible. You can simply do what needs to be done. That creates space inside you. And in that space, something important returns. Your attention. Before, part of your mind was always asking, how am I being seen? Now that energy can go somewhere else. It can go toward learning, toward creating, toward helping someone, toward solving a real problem, toward understanding what life is asking from you. Right now, you become more flexible because you are less afraid of losing an image. You can change direction when the path changes. You can admit when something is not working. You can walk away from a fight that no longer matters, and slowly, your strength becomes quieter. You do not feel the same need to prove it. This does not mean you stop caring about your life. You can still have strong goals. You can still want to improve. You can still protect what matters to you. The difference is that your worth no longer depends on the result. You are acting because something matters, not because you need applause. And that may be one of the greatest forms of freedom. When you need less recognition, you become less controlled by its absence. When you need less praise, criticism loses some of its power. When you need less approval, you can finally hear your own mind. The person who needs the least attention may have more freedom to act than the person who is always searching for it. And if that is true, then the next question becomes even more interesting. What could this quiet freedom change in the way you speak, work, compete, disagree, and live with other people? There is a quiet change that happens when you no longer need to prove yourself. Someone questions you, and you do not rush to defend yourself. You make a mistake, and you do not feel that your whole worth has been damaged. You change your mind, and you do not see it as losing. Something has shifted. You are still the same person. You still have goals. You still care about doing things well. But you are no longer asking every moment to prove who you are. That changes the way you move through life. When you have less to defend, you can listen more closely. You do not have to plan your answer while someone else is speaking. You can hear what they are really saying. You can even admit, I was wrong. And strangely, that does not make you smaller. It makes you freer. The same thing happens with conflict. Before, every disagreement may have felt like a test. If someone challenged your ideas, your mind prepared for battle. If someone did not respect you, you felt the need to win it back. But when your worth is no longer tied to being right, not every fight deserves your energy. You can walk away, not because you are weak, because you are no longer controlled by the need to appear strong. This is where the old idea of power begins to change. Power does not always mean making others obey. Sometimes it means being so steady inside that you do not need to control the room. You can lead without needing praise. You can work hard without turning success into your identity. You can fail without calling yourself a failure. You can win without needing everyone to notice. This is close to what Taoist wisdom points toward through Wu Wei, the art of acting without unnecessary force. It does not mean doing nothing. It means not fighting reality just to protect an image of yourself. When the ego has less to defend, your mind has more space to see clearly. You notice what is happening instead of reacting to what you think it says about you, and that makes action more precise. A person who is desperate to look powerful may waste energy proving it. A person who feels no need to prove it can simply act. That difference is easy to miss from the outside. One person may speak louder, argue longer, and demand attention. The other may say less, listen more, and leave when the moment is over. Yet the second person may have something the first person lacks: freedom. The deepest change is not becoming nobody. It is discovering that you do not need a carefully built identity to deserve your place in the world. You can be capable without showing it every moment. You can be worthy without being admired. You can be strong without standing above anyone. And once there is less of yourself to protect, there is more of yourself available to live. But what happens when this quiet strength enters the hardest parts of life, where conflict, ambition, and relationships test us most? For so long it can feel as if life is a race to become someone successful, someone respected, someone wise, someone important. And there is nothing wrong with wanting to grow. There is nothing wrong with building a good life, doing meaningful work, or becoming better at what you do. The trouble begins when your worth depends on it. Then every success must prove something. Every failure feels personal. Every opinion becomes a judgment. Every room becomes a place where you must show who you are, and slowly life becomes tiring. You are no longer simply living. You are managing an image. Taoist wisdom points toward another way. It does not ask you to stop caring. It asks you to stop forcing yourself into a fixed shape. You can still have goals. You can still lead. You can still create. You can still work hard, but you do not have to turn these things into proof that you deserve respect. You can do good work and let the work speak. You can learn without needing to look wise. You can be strong without needing others to feel weak. You can walk away from praise without feeling empty. This is where humility becomes something more than being modest. It becomes freedom. When you stop needing the world to confirm your identity, the world loses some of its power over your peace. Someone may misunderstand you. You can let them. Someone may not notice your effort. You can keep going. Someone may think less of you. You can remain steady, not because their opinion does not matter at all, but because it no longer decides who you are. This is the quiet strength behind non-forcing. You stop pushing so hard against life. You listen more. You notice more. You act when action is needed, and you stop when it is not. There is less struggle because there is less to protect. And maybe that is what it really means to become less of somebody. It does not mean becoming smaller. It means becoming lighter. You no longer need to carry a name, a role, a victory, or an image everywhere you go. You are free to change, free to learn, free to fail, free to begin again. The person who needs the world to say, "You are somebody," will always need another answer. But the person who no longer needs that answer can finally live. So ask yourself quietly, how much of your life is spent becoming someone in the eyes of others? And what might remain when you no longer need to prove that you are anyone at all?